I never thought I'd be the guy writing something like this, but here I am. My name's Jake, and I'm just trying to make sense of what's happened over the last few weeks. I was with Emily for about 3 years, and honestly, I thought we were solid. She was smart, sexy, a little bitchy at times, but in a funny way, the kind of girl who always kept you on your toes. We were planning to get married, at least. That's what I thought. I was ready for that next step, and she seemed excited too. But things started feeling off a few months ago. Small signs, you know. She'd be strangely distant, texting on her phone late at night, hurriedly shoving it away when I walked into the room. I'd catch her with her phone under the pillow, or she'd brush off my questions about who she was texting. She'd say stuff like it's just work, or my sister, even when I knew her sister was asleep in her bed next door. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but something just felt wrong. Then there were the nights she'd stay out late, claiming she was at girls' night or working late. But I'd find her out with her friends, or worse, I'd see her sneaking out of her apartment late at night, sometimes with her phone hidden in her purse, sneaking calls. I got suspicious, but I didn't want to be that guy who stalks her or accuses her without proof. I figured maybe I was just paranoid. After all, a little jealousy is normal, right? Or so I told myself. One day, I noticed her phone kept buzzing, and she was unusually defensive when I asked about it. That's when I decided to do a little digging. I didn't want to be a psycho. I just wanted the truth. So I snuck into her email account when she wasn't looking, just to see if there was anything she was hiding. That's when I saw the messages. I mean, I knew she was texting someone, but I didn't expect what I found. There were all these secret texts, late at night, talking about what they did during the day, plans to meet up, flirtatious messages, and even explicit stuff, talks about sex, how much she missed him, how she couldn't wait to see him again. My stomach sank. Her words, her tone, she wasn't just talking to some guy, she was cheating on me, and she'd been doing it for months. I couldn't believe what I was looking at. It was like I was hit with a freight train. All the times she'd lied, all the times she'd said she was working late or with friends. She was actually with my best friend, Mark. They'd been texting, calling, sharing secrets, planning to meet up. I found the proof in her messages. Photo after photo of her in bed with him, copping a feel, laughing about how she was going to tell me she was working late, while they were screwing around behind my back. I was numb. I felt betrayed, humiliated, stupid for not seeing it sooner. The worst part, I had been planning our wedding, thinking about our future, while she was out cheating on me with my best friend. How could she do that? How could she lie to my face for so long? I felt dizzy, like the ground had been pulled out from under me. I thought I knew her, I thought she loved me, but I was just fooling myself. The trust was gone, completely shattered. I didn't even know what I was supposed to do next. I just stared at her messages, trying to process what I'd found, trying to figure out how everything had gone so wrong in just a few months. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. My mind kept looping over everything I saw, her texts, the photos, the way she'd lied about everything. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I was so blind to what was happening right under my nose. It's like I'd been living in some kind of illusion, and now that I'd finally seen the truth, I didn't know who I was anymore. I felt anger, pure and raw, but also this deep ache of betrayal that gnawed at my chest. The next morning, I knew I had to confront her. I couldn't keep pretending I didn't know. I waited until she got home from work, her usual confident attitude hiding something, maybe guilt, maybe defiance. When she walked through the door, I just looked at her. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I could see it, the guilt, the lies she'd been living. I felt my fists clench, and I knew I had to say something, had to face her. "Emily," I started, my voice shaking but trying to sound steady, "we need to talk." She looked at me, that same bitchy smirk on her face, and said, "What's wrong, Jake? You look like you've seen a ghost." I took a deep breath, then I pulled out my phone and showed her the messages. Her face instantly changed. Her smirk faded, replaced by that defensive, bitchy glare she always had when she thought she could get away with something. She tried to deny it at first, brushing it off as a misunderstanding, just some stupid texts, or a mistake she'd made because she was stressed. But I wasn't buying it. I told her I saw everything, the calls, the texts, the photos. I told her I knew about Mark, about how they were cheating on me, and I asked her how she could do it. Her response was classic Emily, full of lies, denial, and spite. She snapped at me, saying things like, "You're overreacting. It's not what it looks like, and you're just jealous because you're not satisfying me." That's when I lost it. How could she lie so easily? How come she thought she could just brush this off? I told her I was done with the lies, done with her bullshit, and done with her cheating. Her reaction was predictable. She called me paranoid, insecure, and said I was ruining everything because I couldn't handle the truth. She threw a tantrum, telling me I was overreacting and that I was being possessive. She told me I didn't understand her, that she was bored, and that she needed excitement. That she was still the same person, just trying to figure things out. But I knew better. I saw who she really was, this manipulative, bitchy person who thought she could get away with anything. I felt a mix of rage and sadness. Rage because she'd lied, cheated, and betrayed me after all we'd been through. Sadness because I genuinely loved her and I'd believed in us. It hurt knowing she'd been screwing around with Mark, my best friend, for months behind my back. That realization hit me hard, how I'd trusted both of them, how I'd been blind to what they were doing. I felt like a fool. The biggest shock came when she said, "You're overreacting, Jake. Maybe it's your fault, maybe you're just not enough for me." With that condescending tone she always took when she wanted to dismiss my feelings. That's when I knew I couldn't stay with her. Not after this. Not after she called me insecure and blamed me for her cheating. I told her I was done, that I was leaving. She tried to argue, tried to guilt-trip me, but I didn't care anymore. The damage was done. I packed a bag, left her standing there, and walked out the door, feeling numb, broken, and furious all at once. That night I couldn't sleep again. I kept replaying everything she said, everything I saw. The betrayal had hit me so hard I felt like I was drowning. I didn't know how to process it. I felt betrayed by the person I loved, betrayed by my best friend, and I was left with this bitter taste of loss and anger. How could someone I trusted so much turn out to be this manipulative, selfish person? How could she lie so effortlessly, cheat so blatantly, and then act like I was the crazy one? I didn't have answers yet, just a sinking feeling that my life was forever changed. The days that followed were a blur. I threw myself into work, trying to keep my mind off everything, but it was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, her sneering smile, the texts, the photos. I kept asking myself how I hadn't noticed sooner, how I'd been so blind to her lies. It was like I'd been living in some kind of bubble, and now everything had burst. The betrayal cut deep, and I felt this terrible mix of anger, sadness, and confusion. I kept replaying that confrontation in my head. Her bitchy tone, the way she shrugged off her guilt, the way she called me insecure. It's like she was convinced she was entitled to do whatever she wanted, cheat on me, lie, manipulate. I thought about Mark too, my best friend, the guy I trusted, the guy I'd brought into our lives as if he was family. Turns out he was just another snake. I couldn't believe how easily they played me for a fool, how they thought they could get away with it. But I wasn't going to let that sit. I started thinking about what I wanted to do next. Part of me wanted to burn everything down, expose her, make her regret what she did, and maybe even make her pay. I knew I couldn't get back what was lost, but I could make sure she knew I wasn't going to be some doormat. I also knew I needed revenge in some way. Not just for the cheating, but for the way she lied, the way she made me feel like I was crazy. I started to gather evidence, screenshots of her texts, the photos, anything I could use. I wanted her to see I wasn't some idiot who was going to let her walk all over me. I even reached out to some of our mutual friends, trying to gauge if anyone knew what was going on or if she'd been lying to them too. Most of them looked shocked when I told them, like they'd never suspected anything. That just made it worse. She'd been hiding all of this behind a veneer of charm and bitchy arrogance, acting like she was the queen of her own little world. And then I remembered something. I'd always been good at planning, at being patient. I decided I'd get her back, but on my terms. I wasn't going to storm into her place and yell. I wanted to do this smart. I thought about how I could turn her own game against her, how I could make her realize that I knew what she'd done and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I started laying out a plan, one that involved just enough cruelty to make her feel what it's like to be betrayed, to be humiliated the way I had been. It was a dangerous game, I knew that. But I wasn't just going to sit there and take it. I remembered how she'd always been bitchy, how she loved to manipulate people, especially when she was cornered. I wanted her to feel cornered, to see her own reflection in the mess she made. I started to think about how to expose her to her friends, her family, even Mark. I wanted her to see that I wasn't the fool she thought I was, that I had all the proof, and I was willing to use it. Meanwhile, she kept trying to contact me, sending those little please talk to me messages, pretending she was sorry, trying to manipulate me back into her orbit. But I wasn't falling for that. I'd spent too much time feeling stupid, trusting her, believing her lies. Now I just felt empty, angry, yes, but also hollow. How could someone I loved so much become this person? How could she do this to me, to us? These questions haunted me, but I knew I wouldn't get any answers from her anymore. All I could do was plan my next move. I knew I had to act fast before she managed to spin any more lies or manipulate her way out of the truth. I spent a couple of days collecting everything, screenshots of texts, the photos she'd taken with Mark, the late-night call logs. It was like building a case, only this wasn't court, it was my life. I wanted her to see that I knew exactly what she'd done, and that I wasn't going to be some pushover who just forgave and forgot. One night I set up a fake social media account, just enough to get her attention again. I crafted a message that looked casual but hinted I knew everything. I told her I had proof of her affair, that I knew about her lying, her cheating, and that I wasn't going to stay silent anymore. I knew she'd come running. She was the type who thrived on power, on control, and she hated feeling like she was losing. Sure enough, she messaged back within an hour, trying to deny everything, calling me paranoid and crazy, just like she always did. I didn't reply, just sat back and watched her spin her web of lies. But I wasn't done. I wanted her to know that I had more than just messages. I had everything I needed to destroy her reputation if I wanted to. So I sent her a link to all the evidence I'd gathered with a simple message. This is what I've got, think about it. I knew she'd freak out, and I was right. The next day she called me, furious, crying, begging me not to ruin her life. She played the victim, as always, saying she loved me, that she'd made a mistake, that she'd been stupid. I listened, but I didn't say a word. I just let her talk, knowing that I had her cornered. That call was the turning point. She was desperate, trying to negotiate. She promised to end it with Mark, to go to therapy, to do anything I asked. But I didn't believe her. I knew this wasn't just a fling or a moment of weakness. It had been going on for months. I told her I needed time to think, that I wanted her to understand how deeply she'd hurt me. I told her I wasn't ready to forgive her yet, and I needed her to leave my house. She argued, begged, even threw a few insults at me, but I didn't back down. I told her if she ever tried to come back, I'd be gone for good. After she left, I sat there alone, feeling numb but strangely relieved. I knew I'd caught her in her lies. I knew I had her cornered. And I knew I was finally taking control of my life again. I refused to be a victim anymore. The betrayal was staggering, but somehow I felt like I was regaining my strength. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew this chapter was over. That night, I finally allowed myself to cry, mostly for the loss of what I thought we had, and for the trust that had been shattered beyond repair. I realized I'd been naive, and that sometimes honesty was a luxury you couldn't afford in a relationship with someone like Emily. But I also knew I was done letting her manipulate me. I was ready to move on, even if it hurt like hell. The days turned into weeks, and I stayed pretty quiet, trying to piece myself back together. Honestly, it was a brutal process. Every time I thought I was moving forward, some memory or snippet of her bitchy attitude or her lies would pop back into my head and set me back. I started avoiding our mutual friends, not because I wanted to hide what happened, but because I didn't want to hear the damn excuses or see their pity. I felt humiliated, angry, and betrayed all over again every time I saw her name in their conversations. I also realized I wasn't the only one who got played. Mark, my so-called best friend, had crossed a line I never thought he would. I confronted him after everything blew up. I wasn't gentle about it. I told him exactly how much he'd screwed me over, how I'd trusted him, how he'd been sleeping with my wife behind my back. His excuse was typical. He said he didn't mean for it to get this far, that he was just trying to help her find happiness, or some bullshit. That didn't matter. What mattered was that he'd thrown away our friendship, used me as a pawn, and now I had to live with that. Honestly, I felt numb about it all. It was like I'd lost so much that I didn't even have the energy to get angry anymore. I just wanted the pain to stop. I thought about what she said about her being bored and needing excitement, and I realized how sick that was. She threw away everything we had, all the plans, the future we talked about, just because she was too shallow or too selfish to see how much she was ruining. I'd given her my trust, my heart, and my best friend, only to be left with nothing but wreckage. I started focusing on myself. I joined the gym, took up some new hobbies, even started seeing a therapist. I needed to understand how I could trust again, how I could heal after being so thoroughly betrayed. But honestly, it wasn't easy. Every day felt like a battle. I'd get moments of clarity, then crashing waves of anger and sadness. I kept asking myself why I was such a fool, why I didn't see it coming, why I'd let her manipulate me for so long. The worst part was knowing I'd loved her, really loved her, and she'd just thrown it all away for some meaningless sex and some stupid thrill. But amidst the chaos, I realized something important. I was better off without her. I didn't deserve to be with someone who lied and cheated and called me possessive when I tried to understand what was happening. I was worth more than that. I started to see my own strength, even if it was buried deep under all this pain. I knew I'd get through it, even if it took a long time. The betrayal changed me for better or worse. I didn't want to be that naive guy anymore. I wanted to rebuild, to find someone who actually valued honesty and respect. So I made a decision. I was going to cut ties completely. No contact, no explanations, just moving on. I told myself that I'd learn from this mess, that I'd become stronger, wiser, more cautious. And I promised myself I'd never let someone treat me like that again. Because if there's one thing I've learned in all this, it's that trust is fragile, and once broken, it's damn near impossible to fix. But I also learned that I have the power to walk away, to start over, and to find happiness without the liars and the manipulators. It's not easy, and it hurts more than I want to admit, but I'm finally starting to see a way out of this darkness. Looking back, I realize I'm probably not the same guy I was before all this happened. The betrayal hit hard, and it took everything I had to pull myself out of that spiral of anger and despair. I've learned some harsh lessons about trust, about reading signals too late, and about how people can hide their true selves so well. But I also learned something about resilience, about how, even when everything seems shattered, you can pick up the pieces and move forward, even if it's one step at a time. There's a part of me that still feels the sting of her betrayal, a voice that whispers that I was a fool, that I should have seen it coming. But I try not to listen to that voice too much. Instead, I focus on what I've gained: clarity, strength, and a better understanding of what I want in life. I know now that I deserve honesty and respect, and I refuse to settle for less. I'm not perfect, and I won't pretend to be, but I am determined to rebuild my life on my own terms. It's been a long road, and honestly, I still have days when I feel the ache of loss, the anger of betrayal, but I also have hope. Hope that someday I'll find someone who values me for who I am, who won't lie or cheat or manipulate. Someone who can be trusted, who will stand by me through the tough times. That's what I want now, something real, something honest. And I know I'll get there eventually. For anyone else going through something similar, trust me, I get it. It hurts like hell, and it feels like your world is crashing down. But don't let it define you. Take your time to grieve, to process, to heal, and remember, you're stronger than you think. You don't need someone who manipulates and lies to make you happy. You deserve better. Keep fighting for that. Keep trusting yourself. Because in the end, that's what really matters.